Welcome back to our daily chat about all things Port Charles. I have been watching General Hospital for more decades than I care to count, and if there is one thing my years of viewing have taught me, it is that secrets in Port Charles never stay buried for long. Right now, my heart is just tied in absolute knots over Carly Spencer and this incredibly dangerous game she is playing with her future. When I realized that she chose to hide that mysterious USB drive from Brick in a simple everyday kitchen drawer, I honestly could not believe my own eyes. It feels like such a uncharacteristically reckless move for a woman who usually possesses such incredibly sharp survival instincts. I find myself constantly worrying about why Carly would leave something so explosive in such an ordinary, easily accessible place. Is she subconsciously hoping that someone else will find it and make the devastatingly hard decision for her? My personal opinion is that Carly is deeply, profoundly conflicted about Valentin Cassadine, and that agonizing internal war is severely clouding her usually impeccable judgment. We all know how fiercely Carly loves, and when she finally lets a man past her heavy defenses and into her heart, she builds an impenetrable fortress around him. But Brick, bless his steadfast and loyal heart, knows the dark, treacherous corners of Valentin's world far better than anyone else. By handing Carly that digital drive, Brick essentially placed a ticking time bomb directly into her trembling hands. I feel a deep, suffocating sense of dread knowing that Carly is carrying this immense burden entirely alone, terrified to look at the ugly truth, but completely unable to throw it away. It makes me wonder, how long can a woman ignore the persistent whispers of doubt before they inevitably turn into a deafening roar? This brings my thoughts directly to Jocelyn Jacks, and my goodness, hasn't she grown into an absolutely formidable young woman. I feel such a massive surge of pride watching Jocelyn navigate these treacherous emotional waters, but simultaneously, I am utterly terrified for her safety and her soul. Jocelyn went to bat to secure Valentin's freedom, but I know deep in my bones that her actions were never about any genuine affection for him. Her entire motivation was rooted in a fierce, unwavering, and protective love for her mother. I completely understand her desperate mindset. The mere thought of Carly facing severe criminal charges and prison time for harboring Valentin for months is enough to make any devoted daughter take drastic, unthinkable measures. Jocelyn's actions were a masterclass in familial sacrifice, but I deeply fear they have set her on a catastrophic collision course with the very man she just helped liberate. When I evaluate Jocelyn's current psychological state, I see a young woman who is constantly living on high alert, relentlessly scanning her environment for any lingering threats to her family's stability. The irony of her situation is just staggering to me. The absolute most effective way for Jocelyn to keep Carly out of a cold prison cell was to ensure that Valentin walked free, effectively cementing his dangerous presence in Carly's everyday life. I cannot help but feel a profound, aching sense of sympathy for Jocelyn, who must be physically and emotionally exhausted from carrying the crushing weight of her mother's risky romantic choices. Do you ever look at Jocelyn standing tall and see the exact same fiery, stubborn, and fiercely protective determination that Carly possessed at that tender age? Now, let us talk specifically about that kitchen drawer, because in the world of soap operas, an object placed in such a location is practically screaming to be opened. I have this overwhelming, unshakable premonition that Jocelyn's going to be the one to inadvertently find that USB drive. Just picture the scene in your mind. An ordinary, quiet morning, brewing a fresh pot of coffee, reaching for a simple household item, and suddenly, there it is. My stomach does a nervous flip, just imagining the fateful moment her fingers brush against that cold, unassuming piece of technology. Jocelyn is absolutely not the type of girl to just ignore something that looks out of place, especially when she knows her mother is swimming in incredibly dangerous waters. I strongly predict that her innocent discovery of this drive will be the ultimate catalyst for the most heartbreaking family drama we have witnessed all year. We must always remember that Jocelyn is not just an ordinary, carefree college student anymore. She has been heavily influenced by the shadowy world of the WSB and the dangerous men who constantly orbit her mother's life. Her instincts are sharper and more finely tuned than ever before. If she finds that drive, my personal belief is that her immediate gut reaction will not be to simply hand it over to Carly, but to aggressively investigate it herself. I feel a genuine thrill of anticipation heavily mixed with a sickening dread at the thought of Jocelyn plugging that drive into her laptop in the dark of night. What terrifying thoughts must go through a daughter's mind when she suddenly realizes she holds the digital key to completely destroying her mother's current romance? I am deeply and utterly convinced that Brick did not just compile a list of minor, easily forgivable indiscretions. The information contained on that drive has to be absolutely earth-shattering. Valentin Cassadine is a man born of shadows and deceit, and despite his undeniably charming exterior and the genuine, soft tenderness he frequently shows Carly, his past is heavily soaked in ruthless, unforgivable deeds. I worry myself sick about what horrific, blood-chilling truths are locked inside those encrypted digital files. Could the information be tied to his lethal time with the WSB, or perhaps the sinister, wide-reaching dealings of the Pikeman Group? Whatever it is, I have a terrible sinking feeling that it is something so vile, so completely beyond the pale, that it will shatter Carly's newly rebuilt world into a million irreparable pieces. Watching Valentin and Carly together has always been a fascinating, highly complicated experience for me as a longtime viewer. I cannot deny the intense magnetic pull between them, and there are fleeting moments when I genuinely, desperately want Carly to find a safe, permanent harbor in his arms. But my logical, seasoned mind knows that Valentin is a scorpion at his core, and eventually, it is simply in his nature to sting those closest to him. I actually feel a profound, surprising sadness for Valentin too, because I truly believe he wants to be a better, more honorable man for Carly. However, a leopard cannot change its spots, and the heavy sins of the past always come knocking on the front doors of Port Charles. Will Valentin's desperate, frantic attempts to keep his dark side hidden only serve to make the inevitable, explosive fallout that much more devastating for everyone involved? If Jocelyn manages to unlock the dark secrets of that drive, I predict with absolute certainty that she will not hesitate for a single second to use them. She is fiercely, almost aggressively protective, and I can easily see her confronting her mother with the cold, hard, undeniable evidence of Valentin's ongoing crimes. I can already vividly picture the ensuing tears, the stubborn denial, the blazing anger, and ultimately, the heartbreaking, crushing realization washing over Carly's face. It physically pains me to think about Carly having to face the agonizing fact that the man she risked her own precious freedom for is capable of such unspeakable horrors. I honestly wonder, will Carly initially resent Jocelyn for brutally forcing her to open her eyes, or will she eventually drop to her knees and thank her daughter for saving her from a monster? The complex dynamic between Carly and Jocelyn is undoubtedly one of the most compelling, richly layered relationships on General Hospital, and this impending crisis could either fracture them beyond repair or bind them closer together than ever before. I feel a deep, abiding emotional investment in their mother-daughter bond. Carly has always tried with all her might to shield her children from the darkness, but now the roles are completely, tragically reversed, with the daughter desperately trying to pull the mother back from the edge of a jagged cliff. I evaluate this entire situation as a tragic, monumental turning point, a definitive moment where Jocelyn truly steps into the heavy role of the family matriarch, making the tough, agonizing calls that Carly is currently too blinded by affection to make. Brick's role in all of this simply cannot be understated, and I have nothing but the utmost profound respect for his unwavering, steadfast loyalty to Carly. He provided the loaded weapon, but he respectfully left it entirely up to her to pull the trigger. I firmly believe Brick knows exactly how this tragic play will unfold. He deeply understands that Carly needs to come to the painful realization on her own terms, but he probably never in a million years anticipated that young Jocelyn would be the one to force the issue. I feel a great sense of admiration for Brick's quiet, unassuming strength, but I also worry immensely that his well-intentioned interference might put a massive target on his own back if Valentin ever discovers who dug up his deeply buried skeletons. The dramatic irony of this entire storyline is just brilliantly crafted, even though it absolutely breaks my heart to watch it unfold. Jocelyn, the very person who meticulously orchestrated Valentin's release and paved the smooth way for his return to Port Charles, is now perfectly poised to be the primary architect of his ultimate, humiliating downfall in Carly's life. It is a poetic, deeply tragic twist of fate that keeps me glued to my television screen every single day, analyzing every glance and every sigh. I find myself constantly marveling at the incredibly complex web the writers have woven, where an act of pure love and protection can simultaneously be the very instrument of utter destruction. How on earth will Valentin react when he finally realizes that the young woman who saved his life is also the one who completely ruined his last chance at genuine happiness? I am mentally and emotionally bracing myself for the inevitable, catastrophic fallout, and I strongly advise all of you to have your boxes of tissues sitting readily nearby. The impending breakup between Carly and Valentin will absolutely not be a quiet, amicable parting of ways. It will be an explosive, emotionally gut-wrenching spectacle that will shake the town. I feel so much deep, abiding empathy for Carly, who has endured so much profound loss, grief, and brutal betrayal in her life, only to be faced with yet another completely shattered dream. It is exhausting and heartbreaking to watch a woman you care about constantly pick the wrong men, and I just want to reach right through the screen and give her a long, comforting hug. Will Carly ever find a pure, uncomplicated love that does not require her to compromise her deep morals or risk her very freedom? As I sit here quietly reflecting on all these hopelessly tangled lives, I am struck once again by the enduring, unbreakable power of family in Port Charles. Despite the constant lies, the looming danger, and the heartbreaking, tear-inducing betrayals, the fierce, primal instinct to protect one's own always rises to the surface. Jocelyn's potential discovery of that USB drive is not an act of teenage malice or rebellion. It is an act of profound, desperate, all-encompassing love. I truly believe that even if it causes massive temporary pain and bitter resentment, Jocelyn's heavy-handed interference is the absolute only thing that can save Carly from being entirely, irreversibly consumed by Valentin's darkness. Do you agree with me that sometimes the people who love us the most are exactly the ones who have to break our hearts in order to save our souls?